Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we are going to be talking about past life regression. Just as a primer, what is a past life? What is reincarnation? How does it all relate to karma? Give us kind of a little primer on all of this.
Absolutely. So, past life regression is a very beautiful process that allows people to connect with other lifetimes they have lived so that they can explore the themes, the challenges, the issues that they are currently living through, and they can release them. So, it's really an alternative way of healing, and it's much similar to meditation.
Hmm.
So, it's very gentle, it's very beautiful, and it really is based on the idea of reincarnation, that once a soul is created, it has many lifetimes that it explores
Right.
through.
So if someone wants to believe in a past, because some people don't believe in reincarnation, and thus they probably wouldn't believe in past lives at all, right? But if you were to believe in reincarnation, the idea is that we have many, many lives. And in your book, you talk about exploring various themes, like maybe love or patience, or understanding maybe some of the themes that we are learning in our lives. And the idea, I think, with karma is that, and I really liked your idea of karma that you describe in the book, because the idea that I used to think about karma is that, in the common vernacular, people run around and say, oh, you have bad karma. Like, something is going to get you because you're bad. It's kind of a punitive feeling where I've done something bad, therefore something bad is going to happen to me in my next life or even this life. Where the way that you describe karma in the book is like it's all about life lessons, and that it's about learning. Like, let's say that, you blew up the Twin Towers in 9/11. You actually had a certain perspective that led you to that decision. Then in your next life, you may come with a different perspective. Maybe someone who has, been hurt as a result of a terrorist act yourself. So you may be a parent of a child that was hurt, something like that, which I like the idea better. It's not a punitive thing, but more about getting a different perspective.
Absolutely. I really think that when we start talking about karma as punishment, as a retribution, we really disempower ourselves. We
Yeah.
really take away from our own ability to be the creators of who we are, of our lives. And instead, I would rather have people think of karma as a balancing opportunity. In other words, if something comes up and you're recognizing that you're out of integrity or this is not being to your liking, take action and make choices that will really balance you towards who you know yourself to be truly.
Right. So it's about figuring out what the themes are and then balancing within learning about those themes. And so one of the things that you mentioned about themes, so you have, and the idea, I think, with karma is that you keep on coming back. Let's say love is a theme, and I blew it last life. I come back, love again is my theme again. Does it work like that, where you just keep on experiencing the same theme until you figure out you've learned the depth of what you need to learn?
What you're talking about implies a linear development of time. In other
Yeah.
words, there being one soul, and once the soul is created, it goes into one lifetime. Then, once that lifetime is over, hopefully you learn something, right? Hopefully you didn't
Right.
accumulate too much karma, and hopefully in your next life you will do it better. So it implies a linear progression of getting better and better. And what I have come to learn is that really lifetimes could very well be simultaneously
Hmm.
experienced for a soul. So when you do a regression, lifetimes can be very well stretched in a long period of time.
Yeah.
But also sometimes they can be all bunched, say, in the same 100-year period.
Yeah.
And so from a point of view of our soul, these lifetimes are really they're really unfolding simultaneously. So it's not about getting better the next time. It's really about creating a balance through the experience of saying, okay, the soul is exploring now, say, the theme of love.
Hmm.
And of course, you learn about love not just by being in a very loving relationship. I mean, we
Hmm.
all want that. We
Right.
all are looking for that fulfilling romantic relationship. But you also learn about love by by being with a person who is jealous and mean and disrespectful of you.
Right.
You learn by person by being about love by being abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
You learn about love by you being the one who abandons and who cheats and who is out of integrity.
Right.
So really, the question is, it's really about that balanced perspective and learning.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I think just so folks don't miss the like gigantic idea that you just mentioned, one of the things that blew my mind in your book, so we were talking about your book Beyond Past Lives, is the idea that we could be, I always thought of as past lives as being sequential. So let's say, I live now, I'm going to die, whatever, at age 90, and then like I'm going to be reincarnated, and then the next version of me will pop up. So there's like this sequential, and I've always wondered, because people have like, you've had thousands of lives. I'm like, that's not possible. If I take, average age of 60 times these thousands of lives that you said, mankind wasn't even created, like I'd always come up with a number. I'm like, I don't, the math doesn't work out for me. But what your book, and what you found through working with your clients through regression is that they actually, there's a gentleman who you regressed who actually had another life, had maybe, I think, what was it, 4 or 5 lives within a 100-year period?
Yeah, I have to tell you, I used to have the very same understanding that you just shared.
Yeah.
And so when I had the opportunity to regress this man that you were talking about, John, he experienced 6 lifetimes overlapping in the same 100 and some 30-year period. So I was blown away, honestly. I was thinking, what is going on? I was thinking, how could this possibly be going on? And when I work with people, I always make sure to connect them with the energy of their angels, their guides, their higher self, so that we can understand where they are now, what guidance they need in the moment. And so when I was speaking with his spirit guide, I asked how does this make sense? Can you explain to me what happened? And the answer I received was rather simple. I was told that time flows as a sequential period of developments in our existence here on Earth, and that totally works for us and for the lessons and what we are looking to plan and create for ourselves. But in reality, on a level outside of our Earth existence here, to our soul, time is all unfolding simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so from the point of view of the soul can create so many lifetimes in any development it wants them. It might choose a very neatly stacked progression the way we would think of through time, or a soul might find a very short period in time to be very productive for its learnings. Yeah.
Right. So like this client of yours, John, in theory, because he had 6 lives within this 100-year period, could have met a version of himself, right? A different.
That's just really mind blowing.
Yeah.
Mind blowing. And I have to tell you, it's really extraordinary when you start thinking about reality that way, because then you really start realizing there are no strangers here on Earth. Everybody is an aspect of me in one way or another.
Yeah.
And,
I love that idea. I hadn't even jumped to that conclusion, but absolutely, of course, that would be the case. And now, this all holds true if you believe in quantum physics, right? Where actually you're observing something, therefore you're observing at that moment, but then there could be very many other realities happening at the same time, even within the same place. Like here on Earth, there could be 6 instances of John running around. And then the thing that blew my mind, I mean, I started reading the book and I could not put it down. It was like a mystery novel. I'm like, now what happens? It was just so riveting. Then in the next chapter, you talk about someone who their soul splits in different directions, and there are the female and male within a relationship. They're 2 separate people who are interacting together. Now, I think you call that parallel lives. Is that what you call them?
Yes.
That also blew my mind. What happened to you when you found that one out?
It felt so extraordinary for me. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole session was, and I want to tell for those of you who are listening, at that time I actually used to be a corporate attorney. Okay, so John was my very first client
Yeah.
outside of that comfort zone of friends and family.
Yeah.
Whom you feel safe to explore. So I feel that Spirit was really looking to teach me and to give me so much more. Because after John, so many more people start showing up with with lifetimes overlapping and different possibilities being developed once they make a choice.
Yeah. I almost think that part of it is because I thought I didn't even think it was a possibility, so I didn't even open my mind into believing it's a possibility. And now that I have, I kind of wonder like, well, that means, that it's almost I wonder what kind of past lives I'll start coming up with, including ones that I may be living with this moment. I wonder if you could track down another version of yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I have definitely heard about that in workshops. I have spoken with people, absolutely. And I was doing a workshop in San Antonio,
Hmm.
and this woman was hearing me share all these ideas, and then she raised her hand and she said, "Now let me tell you my story."
Yeah.
And so in her dreams, she has been connecting with three other parts of herself, three other aspects of herself who live in London, in the Amazon jungle, and in Tibet. So
What?
all women actually know of each other and have been affecting each other and working
Wait,
together.
they know they've located each other?
They haven't had physical contact the way
Okay.
you and I do, but in
Yeah.
their dreams, there's no physical barrier
Wow.
between them communicating and sharing and helping each other and knowing of each other.
Yeah.
Of course, she's one of us who is a little more attuned than most of us, right?
Yeah.
That's what she has going on for herself. But because of that, she's showing us what's possible, right? She's
Yeah.
showing us the mind blowing ways in which reality actually operates.
Okay, when she told you this, what was your? Because I'm just curious. Because as a corporate attorney, I also came from a corporate background. I mean, each of these discoveries must be like, what? Or you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was so grateful to her because
Yeah.
now I have a story to tell that goes with everything else that I've been teaching and experiencing in my private work.
Yeah.
But now I have somebody who has worked with me in a workshop, just raising hand and
Yeah.
saying, "Now let me tell you my life." Of course, everywhere I turn now, I'm finding confirmation for
Mm.
what is being given to me through regressions, and of course, that is expanding my own growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now tell us about because for folks that haven't read the story in the book about someone who is two parts of a relationship, I'm not doing a good job explaining. Can you tell me about that client and what you found?
Absolutely. So what he discovered, what he saw was the moment of his soul being born, and he perceived how this other soul is also being created simultaneously with him, and she was part of him. And I'm using a she just because he knows her in his present life as a she, and he experienced also a few other lifetimes with her coming through as his sister, coming through as a love interest, and in his present lifetime, of course, at that time he did not even know her when him and I did the session,
Right.
and he was curious and interested in being in a relationship. So I asked his guide, when will he be in a relationship? And they said, "Oh, rather soon." And I have to tell you, rather soon was an understatement, because the same soul showed up in his life, and now they already are with their second child. They've been together, and but here's the interesting point I want to make about this. So people have this notion, CJ, that when they meet their romantic partner, and their romantic partner is going to fulfill them and complete
Right.
them, and it's going to be,
You're
oh,
gonna be my soulmate. Yeah.
yes, yes. We talk about twin flames as if it's the pinnacle of you just coming into
Right.
your alignment with God. Well, there's truth to that, But first, you gotta face yourself. So what happens with our soulmates? Really, soulmate. My understanding of a soulmate is not just that one exclusive person.
Right.
It's really the bigger vision of those who come into your field and have something to teach you. So a soulmate will show you exactly what you don't have integrated. They'll show you your weaknesses, your doubts, your
Right.
challenges, your issues, the thing you haven't dealt with,
Right.
that have been with you since childhood. And of course, if you walk through that fire, then it's that pinnacle of fulfillment. That was just as a
Wait, so
side.
I thought when I read that story that he was interacting with a version of his own soul in female form. Is that right? But I when I thought of soulmate, I guess I'm still getting schooled here. When I think of soulmates, I think of people that are in the same soul groups. But is soulmate someone who is a version of your soul in a different form?
So what happens sometimes to people is a soul will decide to create lifetimes that are happening simultaneously, and these people will get to know each other. So these pieces of your soul may be your partner, they may be your friend, they may be a person in Brazil that you've never met and you will never meet. Maybe it's a person you encounter on the street and you just exchange glances, and that
Right.
moment of there's something going on. I feel like I have a connection with you.
Right.
And usually you're going through similar lessons, through similar themes and learning, each in your own way. So I know of people who have, we have this very famous example of Jane Roberts, for those of you who know of the Seth books. So Seth, who is this channeled entity that was being spoken through by Jane Roberts back in the 70s and in the 80s, her counterpart, that part of her soul, was her husband, also her friend, and also a few other people in her field. I have the same thing going on with a girlfriend of mine. Yeah. I haven't seen it in a regression, but I am ready to swear that she's a part of my soul, part of my essence, because she and I are walking through similar challenges, each in our own way, right? And yet, it seems that we have created this pattern where I walk ahead, say 1 or 2 months, and 2 months later, she's in the same place.
Yes.
So it creates for a very beautiful sharing and learning and connection.
Okay, so that just blows my mind because I always just thought, okay, and I want to go back to something that you talk about in the very first 2 or 3 pages of the book. I was like, what? It's just fascinating, this whole idea of, okay, we have an individualized soul. I'm, CJ right now. And then I actually have, I think you call it a soul group of people that I kind of have decided to travel around with, each of us teaching us lessons like you were describing about love. And then there's something above that. That's the oversoul. What did you call it? An oversoul, I think?
An oversoul.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the oversoul is a group of, and I couldn't tell what the oversoul was. I know that that's like if there's a hierarchy, it'd be like CJ, individual soul, individual person at least, incarnated being here. And then I have a soul group, and then on top of that is a oversoul. And I couldn't tell, and that's like a group of different souls aggregated together. Is that right?
So here's a very easy way to imagine and visually.
Okay.
Just think of a pyramid, and on the bottom of that pyramid, you have the individualized versions of souls, right? You and I in physical form, a tree, a plant, an animal, individualized souls, and in a physical form. And then on the next level of consciousness, there's less of a division. The next level of consciousness, even less and less of a division. So that's really a very simple idea of thinking how we're all part of each other, but also separate in our forms. So ultimately, we all stem from that one energy of source that we're all creating.
Right on the top of the pyramid, God or whatever you call it, and then there may be angels and. But where does our higher self, you refer to our higher self, which is like the aggregation of all the different versions of us in this higher self, where does that sit in this pyramid?
Yeah, absolutely. So the higher self is really just a part of our soul, part of our essence, part of who we are that is not focused in a physical reality. So we tend to think usually of the higher self as a somehow a being outside of us, right?
Hmm.
A third person, if you will, that is
Right.
outside of us. And yet the higher self is really part of us, part of our energy, part of our structure as an entity that is just not focused in physical reality. And the higher self has the template, if you will, that blueprint, that idea of who we can be in our greatest expression.
Hmm.
And our higher self is guiding us and saying, go this way, this is the way to move forward. Here's an impulse, here's an intuition, here's an arranged event for you so that you can make the most out of it.
Right. So then there's this higher self. So and so I'm merging this conversation that we just had about this pyramid and kind of a an energetic vibrational difference of where we are one and when we're separate individualized points with the idea of the soul. So when so that we have multiple versions of our souls. We have soulmates. So is and I'm just trying to figure out how this all maps together. So if I'm actually an individualized soul, I could actually have my higher soul could actually split out into very different versions of me happening all at the same time, of which I could be meeting those individualized versions of me, of which those individualized versions of me are called soulmates. Is that the right
Yeah,
way of
yeah,
describing it?
absolutely.
Okay. And so all of us are out collecting. It's almost like we're like little bees in a hive mentality, collecting all sorts of information and then uploading it into this higher self. Is that right?
That's a very good way to think of it, uploading it to the oversoul, right? Because we're thinking of the oversoul as just the next level of gathering all of that information. Yes, so we all experience, all share with one another because telepathically we're always connected to these other pieces and parts of us. We're always checking in with each other,
Yes.
especially during dreams, right? We get to talk and we get to connect and we get to give each other advice. So I also want to encourage people to do this in their waking moments of
Hmm.
being conscious during the day. In other words, if you have experienced past life regression, or if an unfortunate life is coming through your dreams, or just spontaneous moments of remembering, that's how people experience other lifetimes sometimes. And you have experienced a sad and unfortunate story in that lifetime, don't think of it as done and complete with, because that's only one version of that lifetime.
Uh,
Potentials can be born in any moment. In other words, send them love, send them encouragement, send them that reinforcement of their highest good, because as I said, we're always telepathically connected with each other.
I see. So, like, if I find like, oh, I found out a past life where I was murdered, and you're like, oh, well, that was the past, right? Versus saying, oh, and sending love to that soul, because if we're all connected to this higher soul entity, right? That stuff is going. I'm healing myself at the same time.
Absolutely, totally,
Yeah.
exactly, because you're most going to connect with lifetimes, in other words, the most that are popping up in your consciousness and awareness, be it through regression or spontaneous memories or dreams, are lifetimes that are working through the same themes.
Right.
So as you help heal them, you are healing yourself as well. As you empower them, you're empowering yourself too.
Right. I think that the key thing is the thing that you said in the very beginning, where it's we think of things time as being linear, as sequential, and when you blow that away and you say actually you could actually be having multiple souls interacting with each other every single day, and it changes everything. I think when you believe in this whole quantum theory and that all these things just happen, it's really mind blowing.
It's really very liberating. It
It
really
is.
removes the need of cause and effect in such limiting ways. It really puts you more in charge of you as a creator, as
Right.
opposed to saying, these are things that are given, I cannot change them, I gotta labor under them,
Right.
I gotta struggle within my own little confines of what I previously perceived. It really opens you up to extraordinary possibilities of knowing yourself as more of the captain of your ship.
Yeah.
Truly, it's master of your soul.
I had a question for you. You have a really good example in the book where you're helping a client who has actually made a particular decision, a life path. Like, I can't remember the exact circumstance, but I'll even use myself as an example because I can't remember. But, I know as a little girl, I loved ballet, and I won this poetry competition. And my life and my parents took me down a whole different trajectory, a different path. And so I didn't necessarily decide, but a decision was made on the behalf of me where my life kind of split in these two different directions. One which would have been a very creative, artistic path, and another that was me going into corporate America, right? These very two separate paths. And the interesting thing that you say in your book and that you led your client through is that, why don't you actually, if all these paths are happening simultaneously, I've just chosen to believe that this path is the path that I'm in now, and that's wherever I'm going to be. But if I actually go back and believe equally and experience what would have happened if I continued with the art, continued with dancing, did all that kind of stuff, what would have happened, and then integrating those two paths. Did I understand that right? Is that what the idea was in the book?
Yeah, that's really the idea, that every choice we make is really creating a whole new path for us. But it doesn't mean that our consciousness is unfolding in only a singular path. It means that every opportunity is being explored by our consciousness. And it's a funny way to think of it, but it really is that moment of splitting of your energy into two possible streams and exploring both. Because think of the divine, think of your soul. It can create and experience anything. Why would it want to limit itself through only one path without exploring all other moments of, let's call it a decision tree, right? Because we can very easily visualize a decision tree and picture a decision tree. So it's as simple as, if I didn't marry this person, if I didn't give up that hobby, if I actually pursued it, if I went to this college, if I pursued that career, if I didn't move to this country or I went to another country, it's just mind-blowing to think.
Right. What would have happened? Go to that life and experience all the thread of what would have happened. Look at your life now, and I think actually what you did beautifully in the story, I think, was you said, okay, well, here's a life you're living now, here, and you've chosen to believe is your life. Here's this other life that could have been your alternate life had you gone down that decision tree. Now, how do you want to merge these things? And I think that that's a beautiful thing, because oftentimes they're like, well, I didn't end up going to med school. I had kids instead, and and it's like, okay, well, what would happen if you had gone to med school, and what, you would be helping people. So how could you actually bring that sense of love and help and nurturance to people in your life right now? Even though you're here, you could go back and do that, or you could actually just say, I'm going to assume that I'm there right now. It's kind of a weird thing, but I think it works.
Yeah, because the theme that we're looking to learn and work through can be expressed in many different ways. In other words, as a helper, you can become a public speaker, you can become a writer, or you can sit and work in a kindergarten for the rest of your life. And yet the theme will be worked through because you'll be of service to others. You'll be working through the theme, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I'm a doctor, as you just said. So the theme has many different expressions. And also, when you start thinking that way, you really allow yourself to not have regrets about things you have missed on.
Right.
And you start realizing, well, there is a part of me that is living that. Now, let me claim my highest good in the present moment. Let me decide what is it that will fulfill me to my greatest. And of course, some of you have trouble with actually making decisions, because that insecurity and that feeling, but wait, if I go down this path, I'm precluding this other path, and I don't want to do that. I'm really afraid of it. So there's this fear sometimes people have of actually even making choices. And I'm here to tell you, go make a choice. You're not losing anything. A part of you is experiencing what other option you didn't go down. So now, when you know that you're not missing on anything, go claim what will give you your highest joy and will give you that sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. We're talking to Mira Kelly, and we're talking about her book Beyond Past Lives. You're listening to the Fired Up with CJ show that you can find on Facebook, on our Facebook fan page, as well as www.firedupwithcj.com. And tell us your website too, Mira.
Sure, it's Mira, Mira Kelly, KELLEY.com.
Great, thanks. So I wanted to talk more about the benefits because you can see now, like we've already talked about one benefit, right, of a past life where you're actually looking at your current life, looking at the decisions that you made using past life regression to go back and see what would have happened if you actually went back through that possibility and merging those two things in so that you can fully explore the theme of your life. So that's one of I think one of the most miraculous benefits that you can imagine in this life. But there are a whole bunch of other benefits as well. Like one of the things I had shared with you before we were calling is that you talk about this in your book that you had TMJ, and I also have a really tight jaw. And I thought when I read your book, I thought, yes, I actually have the same. I have this thing that's still, I've done a lot of work on this, but there's still a past life related to this. So I went and did and listened to one of your hypnosis slash CD or whatever you want to call it. And I experienced a past life where I was a young warrior and I was fighting and I was a prisoner of war and I was captured and people were torturing me to tell me, you know, the battle plans or something like that. And so I was keeping my mouth shut. So my whole, you know, I was clamping down, not speaking my voice because I wanted to protect and be loyal to the people the village that I was from. And I eventually get killed because they're not going to get any information from me. And as I'm getting killed, I hear that my fellow warrior is now spilling the beans. So I'm like, oh, great. I'm shutting up and getting killed. And then this guy who's my work associate is now spilling the beans that I was, you know, now I'm dying for. But then at the very end of the meditation, you have us go back and talk to our higher self, and our angels and our guides are like, what the heck was that all about? What was that past life about? And it was interesting because I realized that one of my themes is about having a voice. And so there have been lives in which I've had many lives that I've done past life regressions before where I've had many lives where I'm like out rebelling and like getting burned, getting killed, buried alive, like every god awful things that you can imagine, pro-religion, against religion, points of light where I'm, you know, whatever, a sage, points where I'm like, you know, a prostitute. I mean, I've had every version, but a lot of the themes that seem to be recurring thread throughout is having a voice. And so that was what the angel said. It's about actually what I learned is, oh, I see. Sometimes it's about speaking your truth, and sometimes it's not about speaking your truth. But the thing is how you actually stay in integrity, regardless of whether you're speaking your truth in a way that's like harmful. Because I think the times when I was burned at the stake or burned alive was usually times when I was being, you know, a jerk about it. That's my guess. I was speaking my truth, but pointing fingers and blaming everyone and, you know, making a big stink out of it, versus the one where I was like stifling and not saying anything. There were kind of two opposites. But so it's kind of, so when I take that as an example of the benefit, I not only got a sense of the physical ailment that I had and have that related to it. And when I talked to you in the beginning of the phone, I was like, oh, you said problems with my jaw. And I'm like, click, and my whole jaw dropped. I mean,
yeah, it's very normal for you to now experience the physical adjustment of the body, you know, with that clicking and the release of the tension in the jaw. Because what happens is once the message is delivered, once the energy has become consciously known to you, and through regression, the lesson is so clear, and now you very clearly see how to apply it. The body doesn't need to carry the message anymore.
That's
you know,
fascinating.
the body has delivered its work, and now it's done. And this is what happened with me with my own TMJ condition. It was such a painful condition that I was suggested that I do an operation. And I had gone through a whole year of trying to mend it, a whole year of trying to fix it, the standard route suggested by my dentist, but nothing was working out. And for me, again, it was the because just that's the general area of the message of the general area of the jaw and the mouth. It was the sense of power and powerlessness, and the ability to speak, and the ability to be in my authentic energy when I present. And I experienced a very impactful past life in which, just for a split second, not even the details that you experienced, mine was the shortest possible thing you can imagine. I saw myself as a slave with this big metal collar around my neck, and it was hurting right where my main pain spot was. Just like, for you, it was the cutting of the throat. And the idea of keeping the secrets, right, and keeping everything very tight, and in your mouth. And so after that experience, the next morning I woke up, and miraculously the pain was gone. So this happens to so many people once they experience regression. The understanding unfolds in their mind. And all of a sudden they find themselves in a new and empowered place of perspective. And it's not like all of a sudden they will hear voices and angels will sing, and their world will go from black and white to color. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it's just a subtle shift. But you're different,
or sometimes not so subtle. And I'm not going to cover it in this video, but I'm actually going to put a link in my blog post on firedupwithcj.com. But you talk about Wayne Dwyer and how you cure him of leukemia, and because you've cured some other person of leukemia. I mean, like, heavy duty things. I mean, the jaw is kind of a heavy duty thing for me, but not in comparison. I mean, it can be some major illnesses that you're able to cure with this.
And that's really what I love about past life regression, because it's not a pill that gets applied to only one condition. It's like one-to-one. Really, you can use regression for anything. Emotional issues, physical issues, relationship challenges, money challenges, issues with your kids or with your parents. You name it, I have worked through it with people, and they have received extraordinary benefits.
Yeah, because oftentimes, one time I had a psychic explain it to me, and he said, sometimes we're like, I can't understand why I can't. Like, I logically understand it, but I'm still, having this certain behavioral situation that I can't seem to break, or I have this weird thing, like this fear that I can't figure out. I'm deathly afraid of being in closed spaces, and I can't figure out why. Well, oftentimes he said it's related to some past life, so that's kind of his cue, like, oh, you need to do a past life regression.
Absolutely. So as we are talking, I know people are starting to get curious. So I want to encourage them to go and check a regression out for themselves, just like I started, right? Just like you probably heard about it some time ago, and just like you did with my regression. Yeah. And a very easy place for people to start with is simply with a recording, just like a guided regression. And I have a recording on my website. People have put out many CDs and recordings out there. So no matter what you reach out for, no matter what venue and work you try, just go for regression, right? Give it a try.
Yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit about actually the logistics, so to speak, of regression. So when you're actually connecting, where are you connecting, and who are you connecting with? Because I know at the very tail end of the one that I did on your CD was I was connecting to my higher self, my angels and guides. But who am I connecting with, and where am I connecting to?
Sometimes people wonder if they're actually leaving their bodies, right? They wonder, where do I go? And actually, regression is a very simple, very gentle process where you just, in a way, you just shift your focus. Just like, for example, you're focused in the present moment, and you see say if you're in the room around you, what is around you, you're just simply shifting your focus by a degree, and you're tuning within, and all the information and guidance that is already there is presenting itself. And because, as we spoke earlier, you're always connecting with these other lifetimes, you're always in communication. So the moment you just reach out, they're there for you.
So do you think that you're shifting into the oversoul or your higher self, or where is it that you're connecting to?
So you're talking technically what happens. So here's what happens. So literally what happens is you actually rise to the level of your oversoul, because to the oversoul all these lifetimes are happening simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
and you're experiencing them as both yourself and as this other person.
Mm.
And that's really because to the oversoul is both experiencing the two lifetimes simultaneously. So it's really that just shift of energy. You're rising in your vibration, and you're merging with you're rising in your vibration and becoming vibrationally aligned with your oversoul. And from the point of view, you can access anything. You can access future.
Ah, okay, got it. So then what you're actually experiencing is you're going to the oversoul and experiencing these two simultaneous lives that are happening. And
Exactly.
at the end you're convening with your higher self to go, "What the heck was that?"
Because
Why?
when you're in regression, you actually don't forget who you are. In other words, you don't blink out of existence, you don't go anywhere, you're fully conscious, you're fully aware, you know you are yourself, but simultaneously, you also experience yourself as somebody else.
Right, because you're connected to that higher self all the time. So it's just a matter of shifting your vibration to a different level. Ah, okay. So there, which goes to the next question, which there's a lot of different ways of doing this, right? There's hypnosis, which is kind of the thing that you do in your CDs. Everyone calls it hypnosis. Some people call it meditation. I mean, what is it? It's the main goal of whatever you're doing, whether it's hypnosis or meditation, is to just shift you into that higher energetic
Exactly.
space.
So the main goal is simply to relax the body. The person knows that they're safe in their physical environment, so they relax the body, and then they simply tune within. It's such a gentle and easy process. And in fact, we do this. It's something that we naturally do at least twice a day. We we do it when we fall asleep and when we
Mm-hmm.
wake up, right?
Yeah.
Our brain moves through different brainwave activities. We awaken the body, we relax the body. So it's something that we very naturally and easily move through. And of course, we do it when we meditate. We
Right.
simply tune within.
Right. So we're actually, and one of the things that you talk about a little bit about the neuroscience of it, and then it's actually getting your brain in a certain frequency, right? So you're moving into theta state, which is the division between conscious and unconscious. Is that right?
Yeah,
That's the goal.
it's that state of that we all know where here again I'm going to speak about falling asleep. It's that state where you know you're just about to fall asleep, but you know you can also pull yourself out of it and say, okay, I'm going to go wash the dishes, for example, right?
Right.
Or whatever it is, because you know you're starting to dream, but you're still conscious. So
Right.
that's how people usually experience regression.
Right. So it's this kind of whatever your path. You know, I've actually on shamanism, they have drums that get you into that path. It could be hypnosis that gets you into that path. It could be a guided meditation. It's the whole goal is to get you in that your brain in the right kind of theta state between consciousness and unconsciousness, right? So because what as I was reading on the web, lots of people have like, well, how about if they hypnotize me and make me turn into a chicken, you know? Which I think is a real and valid thing, because we've seen those kind of things, right?
This is such a very good question, and I hear it all the time, right? Because people have seen stage hypnosis, which is done for the purpose of entertainment.
Right.
So when people come into the medium of stage hypnosis, into that event and exchange,
Right.
the person who is going to be hypnotized, they come with the understanding of, okay, I'm going to do whatever is asked of me, and I'm going to do it and feel comfortable with it. And the person hypnotizing is saying, okay, I'm just going to use my willpower, and I'm so powerful that they're going to do what I tell them to do. In other
Right.
words, it's a telepathic already agreement of the mind.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that hypnosis has nothing to do with mind control. It's really simply shifting your brainwave activity so that you tune within. You know that your body is safe. You know that you're comfortable. You know that nobody's going to come and startle you. And
Right.
then you just simply allow your mind to drift. So So that's why I very much like the analogy that regression is very similar to meditation,
Yeah, yeah.
because then people feel, oh, okay, that
Yeah, I've
sounds.
done that. I do that all the time. Okay, so I have another question about going back. I think earlier in their conversation we were talking about themes, and you've done a lot of past life regressions in groups, with individuals. Do you find that, and I guess part of that is, again, is I'm still stuck in the old way of thinking of like, okay, I'm an individualized person, and I have this sequential life. But do you find that that when people actually, they, from life to life, that they change genders, they change personalities, they, I mean, what kind of things say the similar? Because you've actually had sessions, like 4-hour sessions, when people go from lifetime, lifetime, lifetime after lifetime describing them. What do you see stays the same, and what kind of things change lifetime to lifetime?
You're absolutely right that we experience all races, all genders, as if there's more than two, right?
Yeah.
We experience both genders. We experience being a child, a parent, being an older adult. In other words, we really move through all phases of life and of growth, and of course, all socioeconomic conditions. We've been through all sexual orientations. And here's a funny thing to tell people. If there is a group of people that you feel strongly connected to or strongly dislike them, chances are there is a life you have experienced there.
Yeah.
So I did a regression with a woman who has a brother that is gay. And in her regression, she saw herself a few centuries back where she was a gay man, but at that time there was not even a word for it, okay?
Yeah.
It wasn't even a recognized or allowed
Right.
thing to do. So the young man had an older brother, and the older brother was always pushing him to be different, always disliking him being more feminine, more attuned to his emotions, and always trying to make him be a man and act like a man, and never really accepted him. Now, guess what? So in this lifetime, this older brother is her brother, and he is gay, and he's having the hardest time with his sexuality. In other words, he's putting so much judgment on it, so much, it shouldn't be this way, I need to fix it, will people put me down, will people accept me? And guess who is his biggest support? It's his sister, who's saying, I love you no matter what. You can pink, green, or purple, you know?
Yeah.
So I think this is such a beautiful example that if you have a challenge with a different with things within yourself, chances are you have experienced them in other lifetimes.
Yeah, I love that. So there's, one time someone said this whole idea of like, you'll just keep on coming back until you solve this idea. So if you have multiple lives, you could be solving the same idea at the same time, and it could be, at the end of my life, I will have figured out the theme of X, whatever it is, love, or forgiveness, or whatever that may be, because all of my other fractionalized versions of my souls are working so hard making that happen. Is that right? So it could be that you could be done with a theme in a short, 100-year period. How does that work?
Well, themes are something very interesting because we have chosen to incarnate at a time where consciousness is shifting so quickly, right? We see our lives playing out so quickly, things moving so fast. That's why we change jobs so often.
Yeah.
That's why we have a few relationships as opposed to being in the same village, doing the same thing that our grandfather did and 3 grandfathers ago before him did, right? In other words, our lives are so dynamic, and we grow in our understanding, and we shift through things so quickly. So it's very common for people to come to the conclusion and resolution within them of something big they've been working through, right? And here's a very practical example. For example, I have a girlfriend who has been struggling with all these man issues, right? Self-love, self-acceptance, allowing others to be there to support her. And it was all playing out through intimate relationships with men. And then she recently met somebody, and she cannot she cannot stop saying, he's so different. In other words, she's recognizing that she has come to a lot of peace within herself. She has resolved a lot of her issues, a lot of her beliefs that she picked up as a little girl. You know, that theme is complete. And that's why all of a sudden the challenge now is
I see. Yeah. No longer. She finds a guy, done.
yeah. She's attracting a whole new person into her life. She is becoming herself a new person.
Fascinated.
So, and you know that definitely happens to us. And so it's really, of course, will the soul take a break? No, chances are you pick up a new thing to work through.
Right, exactly. Don't worry, there'll be something else on the action item list.
But the point is, we live in very dynamic times. Extraordinary things happen.
Talking about this book, Beyond Past Lives, and during the show, the chat room was going crazy. We had so many questions that we wanted to answer them, because this is really complicated, mind-blowing stuff. So I'm going to try to do my best at answering these questions, or asking these questions, but some of them have to do with, if we actually are parallel lives, that kind of expands all sorts of possibilities. And, can we jump from can we actually jump from one life to another, parallel to parallel? How does that whole thing work?
It's well, we're doing it during regression, aren't we? You simply shift your focus and you experience what their life is like. Will you still come back to being John and Peter and Mary and Sue? Of course, yes. You're not really leaving your body behind in any way. Your mind is simply having the adventure of exploration.
Right. So it's actually, your physical body is going to be the same. The only how you actually go. So the question is, can we jump from one parallel to the other? And the answer is yes. In fact, that is what you're doing when you go up through the oversoul, right? And you're actually experiencing all these lives at the same time.
And if you were to think about my life as Amira and your life as CJ, our lives are composed of separate moments, right? And our mind is very good at actually creating continuity and cause and effect between moments. And that's really the reason, because we believe in things needing to develop slow, why sometimes we drag issues for centuries, right? And of course, I'm exaggerating, but for decades, we're struggling through the same stuff. But if you start realizing that, if you start seeing time as parallel streams of energy, of time next to each other, much like parallel roads, right? Two paths unfolding together. Think of the lanes on a highway, or whatever visual you can think of. And then you start realizing that each moment is its own separate reality. Each separate moment is its own separate time stream and its own separate reality. So then you start realizing that your mind is actually indeed, I know one of the questions has to do with quantum jumping, right? Your mind is indeed flowing seamlessly, your consciousness between these different realities, but in truth, it's also simultaneously creating that cohesive story of who you are, that cohesive picture of what is happening.
Right.
So are you shifting reality? Yes. Realities, technically, yes, you are. I recently spoke with someone, and she said to me, it was actually an interview. And the woman said, I just had dinner with this lady, and she was telling me how she was in a car, and she was driving all these kids from, some activities back home, and they crossed through an intersection, and there was a car accident, and yet they came out of it without being harmed. So this woman had this profound realization that in that moment, one reality ended and another continued. In other words, she knew that there was one version of reality where they all died, And in another version of reality, they just flow seamlessly without having been hurt. So we usually experience this as the feeling of, I should not have survived. This
Right.
is a miracle. Things should not have worked that way. In other words, sometimes we create in our experiences these bigger leaps of things happening, right? These miraculous things happening, miraculous healing, miraculous conversations. I mean, those moments that are really extraordinary, and we all
Mm-hmm.
have them. So what happens is our mind simply creates a greater distinction between the realities that we normally flow through that seem so much alike each other. I
Right.
hope this is helping rather than
Yeah, no, I think let me see if I can summarize what you said in the example is this woman thought she was, and in fact she was heading towards an accident, but in her mind she actually made a quantum jump, so to speak, where she actually jumped to another reality where they were all safe. So it was something that happened in her consciousness, I guess, and that happened somehow with quantum physics. I don't know. Is that right? I mean, what could explain that?
um, we shift through parallel realities, parallel versions of ourselves constantly. And simply what she was doing is the consciousness just naturally flew into that other stream of unfoldment where there was never any harm going on, never having had that experience. So it's just a shift in consciousness. To her mind, it feels like it's a beautifully unfolding story. I started the car at this place, we went through the stoplight, and then this is what happened.
Right.
And yet you can think of this as a miracle. In the moment of the miracle happening, we're not aware. We usually know it happening on the other end of
Right.
the
Right.
gap between the moments.
So there's some shift. Why the shift happens, how the shift happens, we don't know. This is the miracle part of it. But she walked in with one consciousness and then boom. Is that what you mean?
This is really the greater details that our soul works through. In other words, it serves us to experience it that way. It's the shifting sometimes of our beliefs and what's possible for us, and that sudden change of direction. In other words, our mind has a lot to do with it, our consciousness, our expectations of life.
Yeah, and so this was another question that someone said is, do you have to jump to die in order to have that parallel?
Absolutely not. Oh my, that's why when I was talking to somebody recently, and one of my very close friends is a woman by the name of Anita Morjani.
Hmm.
And Anita Morjani had a near-death experience. She had cancer, and in the moment of her body dying from cancer, she had a near-death experience. And in her near-death state, she met with the soul of her father and of her friend who had passed on. Both of them had passed on previously. And they gave her all this beautiful information, and they gave her the choice. Do you want to continue on into the spirit world, or do you want to go back to your body? And she chose to go back to physical reality, and her healing was very rapid. And so when I was talking to this person, we were talking about Anita's story, and I jokingly said, the best thing about past life regression is that you get to learn about the spirit world. You get to
Hmm.
learn about the eternity of your soul. You get to experience everything that people talk about in their near-death experiences without needing to die.
Right. Yeah, so you don't have to die. You can actually have a past life regression where you actually are able to access this information. And then someone was asking, saying, well, what if someone's in a coma? Can you actually regress? I think the question is, can someone actually be in a coma and you could regress them as well?
So, if you have a relative who is in a coma, I really want to encourage you to talk to them. Talk to them because they hear everything.
Hmm.
They hear everything that is going on in a different country, if you will. In other
Right.
words, when you are out of the physical body, there's no limitations in space and time, and everything is able to be perceived. So talk to them, and offer them forgiveness, offer yourself forgiveness, offer love, and also tell them to make the choice out of whether they want to transition out of a place of love as opposed to out of a place
It's a
of fear.
fear, yeah.
Because sometimes people stay in a coma because it serves everybody else in the family, just because the family is not ready to let go of. But sometimes people are in a coma because they're so terrified of what happens to them when they die, because if you know all the things about being sinful and going to hell and being judged, and will your existence be annihilated, all these things that people have heard throughout their lives. So sometimes they're slowly making that transition while their consciousness adjusts.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, you can actually talk to someone in a coma. In fact, you could be really helping them because they're having problems either transitioning, or your family's having problems with your passing, and just knowing that you're going to be okay will help them kind of move on or come back. I mean, like your friend Anita, is that her name?
Anita Morjan.
Anita,
Yeah.
yeah. So then the other question is, can you access the portal from different dimensions? And I think the answer was yes. Go into regression, and that's how you access these portals. Is that right?
It's very natural. It doesn't feel that shifting. To put it in the words of this listener, the accessing of these portals of this information, these other dimensions, happens very naturally, very easily.
Yeah. I have to, and I can't read my handwriting for the next questions, but I will share the following, which is, I found out through my past lives through doing neuro-linguistic programming. There's a hypnosis that they have. You go back to the very first instance that you developed, a particular neuroses or attitude or belief or whatever. And you go back, you heal that part of you. And then I've done that so many times myself that for me to actually just tune into a past life, oftentimes I can just go in and tune in, and if I'm in the right mood, I can just access the information with a grand amount of details. It doesn't have to be an elaborate process, because I think after you believe that it's possible and you tune into that energy, it can be easy and natural, like you're saying.
It's very easy. It's very natural. And what you're describing is similar as skiing. In other words, the first time you get on ski,
yes,
sliding and slipping around and not keeping balance. But once you do it a few times, once you actually get the practice, it's so easy.
Yeah.
So you said something about believing. Actually, believing in past life regression is not a requirement for you to experience it. People can dive into this work without even knowing if it's real or not,
right?
And just explore for themselves and see for themselves.
Yeah. And I think the skiing thing is right. I mean, it's the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And I can't sometimes with clients when I'm working with them, I can't tell them exactly what I'm doing because it would be too terrifying. So I kind of say, oh, we'll go through a meditation and we'll go through this stuff. And they're able to do that pretty easily, without believing, and they don't even believe in half this stuff. All right. So the other question was, and this had to do with in our interview, we were talking about a person that you talked to that actually has, through her dreams, contacted different versions of herself living parallel realities. Right now, there is one in, what did you say, in Australia, England, and I'm not sure where she is, the Amazon jungle. So she's actually experiencing. So the question was, can we control those different selves if we are aware that they exist? I don't know what the gal said when she's dreaming what she's doing.
So my answer is no.
Oh, you've said yes to everything else.
Just like you cannot control your husband for him
Yeah.
to throw the trash more often, or your kids to do your homework. No, but what you can do is you can empower them. You can tell them you believe in them. You can show them through your own example. You can be that force of love and support for them, and it's for them to choose what they want for themselves, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You can really come from that place of non-judgment and love, and it's really their choice from there on.
Well, if I think of it this way, like they're on their individualized journey for them to discover we're all explorers. And so if you try to control their destiny, then you're kind of cutting off a potential learning that you could get at a higher level, right? If, you've already lived your life, you live your life, let them live their life and figure out what they need to figure out. Okay. So I think this is during the interview we talked about. It could be, my soulmate is my husband. I do feel like my soulmate is my husband, but it could be that we are fragments of the same soul. So the question was, can we actually fall in love with ourselves? Right?
Well, can I tell you something jokingly? Don't we actually really fall in love with ourselves when we fall in love? Because when we fall in love, all of a sudden the world is but this beautiful song. Everything makes sense. Everything is easy and effortless. So what happens? We really come into alignment with ourselves. That's why the moment of falling in love is so extraordinary.
Yeah.
But to actually take it seriously and to answer your question, yes, of course, you're always falling in love with parts of yourself. Yes, it's definitely there. But please remember something: you are your own first soulmate. So look to find completion and fulfillment within yourself. Look to be a person who has a full life, who has a life of integrity, who is excited about living her purpose or his purpose. And then of course go enjoy and share with the world and with others and with your soulmate, as opposed to saying you're going to fulfill me, you're going to make my life have meaning and give sense to my existence, right?
Yeah. Be full yourself before you try to get someone else to actually fulfill who you are. And it's funny, I was talking to my husband about this. I'm like, well, as I'm tracking the information, in your book, Beyond Past Lives, I'm like, so we could actually be the same person. I mean, and he's like, yeah, but we've had different mothers and fathers. We have a different physiology. We've actually have different birth orders. We have, different we have different things that make up who we are. So we're always going to be slightly different, even if we actually are the same fragment of the same soul, we're always going to be slightly different. So there's always, because I think always the ego goes, does that mean I'm not unique? Am I just some aggregate of some other aggregate? But I do think, and that's he's like, we'll always be different. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. We're always going to be individual and unique in our own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if,
and yes, exactly. Each one of us has a purpose of being here, to be that individual and unique energy, to be here as who we are.
And do you think that each person has a unique purpose? And how does past regression help with that, finding a purpose?
I have to tell you, that's one of the questions I hear most often.
Yeah.
What is my life purpose? Because we all feel that we are here for a good reason.
Yeah.
We want to know that we matter, that we are going to have our impact on the world, that our existence is meaningful. And so I hear this most often. And past life regression is really an extraordinarily easy way to release the blocks to living your purpose, but also to discover what your purpose is. And so here's the simple answer, okay? The simple answer is your purpose is to be who you are, yourself, 100%, your true energy of serving others in the world, not what you were told to be, not who you were expected to be, but really to be yourself, because then you're really fulfilling your destiny of serving others and being of service and bringing those gifts and creating what you will bring into the world. Of course, it's a very easy answer, right? It's in the application of it that we get all tangled up.
Right. So our purpose is to be ourselves and to do what we're programmed to do. And we do that by eliminating all the other garbage that we've put into our head. That's at least my summation of what you said.
Summation. Of course, is it easy?
No.
Really, when we get into those beliefs of how am I going to be supported, but will they approve, but who's going to come?
Yeah.
Who am I to be doing this? All the stuff we tell ourselves. And that's really where regression is very useful, to release all those blocks.
Yeah, because you may have had a past life where that may be influencing your behavior. Like I was, maybe had my throat slit as a prisoner of war. Maybe I don't want to speak anymore because that happened, and that would be a block necessarily in my current life where I speak as a living. So that would be an example of a block.
And that's a way to balance, right? So that's the soul balancing simultaneously. So you had a lifetime where you were not speaking, and there's the life where you bring all these secrets of the universe.
Yes.
Of the world. out there for everybody to hear.
Yeah.
And of course, now that you have created these connections with this other lifetime where you were hurt for keeping secrets, and where you felt the structural movement in your jaw, I can only imagine how much more powerful and authentic your work will become, and how much more you will speak from your heart.
Yeah.
But there's also, just, you know, as a side note, I bet you're a person who knows how to keep secrets very well.
I do.
Friends really trust you.
I am, but it is interesting. It's a balance of those two things. It's lives where I've had to keep secrets, and lives in which I was like ardently screaming what I thought was my truth. And that's actually where the problems, I think, were allied, because I thought that they were truths, when in fact they were my truths that I was trying to make everyone else believe as truths, versus what we're doing now, which is like we're just discovering what part of it is help people figure out what their truth is.
Yes, because ultimately all truths are true. Right?
Yes.
There's not one big truth.
Yeah.
All truths compose the truth.
Yes.
So yes.
Thank you so much. It's so gracious of you to stay later so that we can answer the listener questions. And thank you, listeners out there, for asking us such great questions. These are fantastic questions. I mean, these are like mind-blowing ideas, and these are mind-blowing questions too, don't you think? Fantastic questions.
I love that. I love the engagement of the listeners.
Yeah. So we were talking.
Share with them.
Make sure to get this book, Mira Kelly, Beyond Past Lives. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure for me.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.